I have a friend that I met in high school, met her in art class. First, I was kind of scared of her because she was kind of emo, gothic person, and whenever I sat next to her, I started talking to her, and we became like best friends. Actually, at one point, she became my girlfriend, so I was really close to her, and then one day, she told me that she was moving to Michigan, and I was really sad because she had to break up with me because she didn't like long-distance relationships, so I was kind of disappointing area in my life, I guess. I was at home one day, and she calls me when I'm playing Guitar Hero, just chilling, and I pick up the phone. I'm like, "Hey, Ashley, how's it going?" And she just starts like yelling and cussing at me. I'm like, "Well, what did I do? I mean, I didn't do anything." And she's like, I just can't deal with it anymore." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she just kept yelling and cussing, and I was trying to calm her down. She just told me that she was sorry and she just can't do life right now. And I was like, "Well, what are you talking about? Just tell me what's going on." It's just like, I can't tell you right now. I mean, it's just, I'm just going through a really bad time, and I hear like a cock of a gun, and I'm like, "Ashley, what are you doing?" And she's like, "I just can't take it anymore." I'm like, "Ashley, just calm down. I'm trying to help you." And then she hangs up. At that time, I kept trying to call back. No one would answer, and then finally I get a phone call, and it was her mom. And her mom tells me that she shot herself in the head, and right after she told me all this, I told her, "I'm sorry, I can't talk right now." I started to cry. I just hung up and got down on my knees and started questioning God, like, why her, why her? And she's my best friend, she was my girlfriend. I don't know why it had to be her of all people. After all this happened, there was a point in my life where I did not want to go to church. I could not listen to sermons. I did not want to sit in church and listen to what they had to say. I just thought it was wasn't true or anything. I haven't talked to anybody about this. I've never told anybody my story, no one in my family and none of my friends. I just felt like this was the best way to do it, to ask everybody if they could just pray for me to not have a grudge on God anymore, and to also pray for the family of my lost friend.
It's certainly understandable that Tyler would be feeling the pain and the hurt and even the depression that he's feeling from the loss of a loved one. That's how we naturally respond. In fact, as soon as I saw the story, I just instantly thought of Job in the Bible, who went through the very same thing. He lost his family, he lost his reputation, he lost everything. And he was sitting there asking the same question Tyler was asking, saying, "God, why? Why did this happen?" And what's so interesting about the book of Job is Job asks over and over again, and God never tells him. He never gives him an answer. Instead, God says, "Look, Job, where were you when I created the universe? Where were you when I created these beautiful sea creatures at the depths of the ocean?" And God's point is, you might not see why, but I'm good. I'm in control. I've never let go of the steering wheel, and I have a plan for this. He says, Job, trust me. You know, I think it raises the question of how does God deal with our doubts? Is it okay to doubt God? Is it okay to have questions? You know, when I read the Bible, even David, a man after God's own heart, had doubts. I mean, listen to what he says in Psalm 142. He says, "I cry aloud to the Lord. I plead aloud to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaints before him, and I reveal my trouble to him." God can take our doubts. And when we speak that truth to him, I think that's when God begins to really heal our hearts. You know, I would encourage you, though, if you're in this point where you've ever felt a sense of just being so depressed and that life is worthless and not worth living, get help. Talk to somebody. Or even if you have a friend and you see just signs in this person's life that they're becoming depressed, or you think this person could even possibly take their life, hey, stand up, even if you're going to get criticized, for the sake of this person, and get help, because you really could save somebody's life.
My dad had type 2 diabetes. It got so bad that his blood sugar was fluctuating so much to where he couldn't see or hardly stand up because when he stood up, the circulation to his legs was completely gone. I pretty much had to force him to take care of himself. The night before he passed away, it was just a normal night. You know, he told me good night, and I said, I'll see you in the morning. I woke up the next morning just like I always did. I walked into his room, and I shook him, and he was really cold. The 911 operator, she said that I needed to start doing CPR, and I'll never forget the feeling of his breastplate cracking. And that's when everyone was called, and we're all at the hospital, and I just knew ahead of time before everybody else did that, you know, he wasn't gonna make it. And so depression started setting in really quickly. I mean, I kind of wondered, why me? Why did God do this to me? You know, I thought my dad was gonna be here for years to come. Even though he had so much problems, I still thought I could make it through. I started skipping class a lot because I just didn't know what to do with myself. I ended up failing 2 classes because of it. I have friends and I love them dearly, but at the same time, they don't know what I've been through. I need to talk to somebody who's been through this. And it was frustrating that I couldn't find anyone who had been through something like that, especially at my age. I was at the Young Life convention. My Young Life leader asked if I would talk about my dad, and I said I didn't have a problem with that at all. I'm getting up there for my testimony, and I stand off to the side afterwards, and I see people out in the audience crying, and I didn't think it was for me. It kind of hit me then that I never had a problem speaking about it. Why not share it with other people who may be going through the same thing? I just really wanted that to kind of consume my life in a sense, to help others. Because if there's one thing that I ever picked up from my dad is the fact that he cared more about others than he cared about himself.
Ryan is really a remarkable young man. I think all of us can learn something from his life, whether we're going through pain right now, whether we've been through pain in the past, or even kind of preparing ourselves for when difficult times come. Now, all of us, when we go through something just as painful as losing a father, are going to be hurt and have to deal with that. The question is, how do we deal with it? For Ryan, he talked about driving around, helped him a little bit. He kind of dropped out of school and stopped caring. But did you notice where the turnaround happened? The turnaround happened when he shared his story with other people. Instead of just keeping it to himself, he realized that when he could share it with other people, that they could help carry some of the burden, and that his story would encourage other people. It actually helped him to heal. And Paul talks about this in Romans 12:15. He says, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. We're not meant to bury things inside. We're meant to share them with one another and encourage and really cry with people when they're going through pain. That's when real healing can take place. And I just love how Ryan talked about his father. And I think his father gave an incredible example of what it means to be somebody who really experiences happiness. When he said his father cared about people more than himself. If we live that way, then the burden and the pain we go through really becomes secondary, because our life is about loving other people.
My story starts pretty much when I turned 16, and I noticed that one of my legs had kind of gotten a little bit swollen and it was hurting pretty bad. And so we went to the doctor. And just a couple weeks after that, we found out that I had cancer. I think I experienced most of the fear was like the fear of the unknown, like it's just kind of not knowing a lot what happens in the medical field. You don't really know what they're going to do to you, and that was a huge fear, I think, for me. You kind of question, why me, but it wasn't so much, God, why would you choose me to have this because you're such a horrible God? It was more like, what purpose is this going to serve in the future? They were completely able to remove the tumor after the surgery, and then following that, they did radiation to ensure that all the cancer cells were dead. I would have scans every 3 months, I think, to make sure everything was gone, and up until almost a year after my radiation treatment, everything was fine, and then in that summer, I was re-diagnosed with cancer in my lungs. Well, me and my mom and my sister decided to go to Africa. Well, when I found out that I might have cancer again, it was kind of maybe, should I go to Africa? It was kind of a real quick thought, maybe, and I was like, yes, I should go. So I decided that, I'm gonna go and do what God originally called me to do. And we decided to go to Zambia, Africa on a mission trip, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. Well, when you have cancer, you get to make a wish, obviously, and I was in the kitchen with one of the men from Make-A-Wish, and my parents weren't here with the woman from Make-A-Wish, and they kind of ask you separately, what does she want? And I told them that I wanted to help build an orphanage in Africa, and they were kind of blown away by that. The Make-A-Wish man was kind of confused at first, and then he was like, okay, if that's what you really want. You know, I've never heard anyone ask for anything like that before, but, you know, we'll see what we can do. I'll talk to the people there. And they got back to me eventually and told me that they had given me $2,600 towards it, which is the max amount that they give anyone for something like that. So it cost $60,000 to build one of these orphanages. So when Make-A-Wish gave me the money, I kind of thought that with this, you know, I could build off of this. You know, this was the first money that was put in, that I could build off of this, that maybe more people would want to give. All of these people have been wanting the story and being out on TV, and then offering places to give them money has kind of brought it all in. Well, when I got all the money for the house, I couldn't believe that it had come in at all so fast, and that people were so willing to give to someone that they didn't know. Just really amazed at what God did with, you know, my one decision that he gave me to do this, and that he had rewarded me so much for, you know, going out there and trying to get it done. God definitely provided, and I was able to. So it's definitely very satisfying.
It is so encouraging to hear that Kristen is beating cancer, not only once, but twice. You know, as I look at Kristen's life, it seems like she's just mastered something that so many people haven't. Because there's really one thing that I think keeps more people from happiness than anything else. It's seeing ourselves as a victim. I'm a victim of how I look. I'm a victim of what people say about us. I'm a victim of my circumstances. And that robs us of the ability to appreciate the things that God has given to us in our life, and really to live the way that God wants us to live. I mean, I love it that instead of just, you know, feeling sorry for herself, and look, if anybody had the right to feel sorry for herself, it's her, having cancer at so young. But instead she saw, you know, the circumstance that happened as an opportunity to just bless and love other people. And that's why I think Jesus said, when he was talking about happiness, he said, whoever wants to keep his life or find his life will lose it. But instead, as in Matthew 16:25, he says, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Real happiness involves not in focusing on the self, but in reaching out and in loving other people. You know what happens is when difficult times come, and when Christians still love and trust God through it, it's one of the most powerful testimonies we have to an unbelieving world. So if you're going through pain, or you're going through difficulty, or just struggling to make sense of your happiness, realize that as you go through this pain, if you can learn to trust God, that people from the outside will look in and see your life, and you'll be a testimony that God is good. And you can change the way that many people think about God, and who knows, maybe even lead somebody into a relationship with their Creator.